Okay, I want to call the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of September 17th, 2018 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First up, consent agenda, approved town council meeting minutes of September 4th, 2018, town council workshop notes of August 27th, 2018, town council meeting minutes of August 6th, 2018, set November 7th, 2018 as a hearing date for renewals of liquor licenses and victualling licenses, set December 3rd, 2018 for a hearing date for holiday sales license renewals, accept the following monthly financial activity report, town clerk, approved petition of National Grid and Verizon for a joint pole on Arcadia Road.
I'd like to call the minutes for August 6th, please.
Okay.
So moved except for August 6th. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. What page, Dave?
No page, I just wasn't here, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
I better stay, so somebody will carry that.
Motion to approve town council meeting minutes of August 6th, 2018.
Second.
Okay, motion made second. All those in
And,
favor?
Never mind, go ahead.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Abstain.
Okay. All right. That's great. First public forum. Anyone wishing to be heard tonight?
Scott Hurst, 20 Maple Court, Ashland. I got a couple of things I want to say. Number one, Eric and Louise Burton are going to be celebrating their 75th wedding anniversary. When I was a Cub Scout many years ago, Louise helped out the late Vivian Hose, and there's very few people who reach 75 years. Their son died in Vietnam. He's on the Vietnam Veteran Wall. They've been very interested in this town, and Louise was the sunshine lady for the Historical Society, for Historical Association correctly, for a number of years in the past, and it would be nice if the council got a citation if possible for them. Number two, usually the omnibus meeting of the Charter Oak School District is in January. Not yet on the council, but I would hope that the council would send a letter that we can talk about something other than the budget. The political reality is the round general assembly meets from January to sometime in June, maybe even later in July. And any legislation that would impact the Charter Oak towns regarding education could be discussed. I really think it's a disservice to the town councils as well as the school committee and the public at large if we don't talk about potential legislation or anything else we need to have discussed, because in light of the fact that we have an open meeting board that requires you have a majority of any elected board gets together and has to be duly advertised. I just think it's very short-sighted not to have other things discussed at the omnibus meeting. In addition to that, the budget discussed is only a working document at that time, so I would hope that the council would deal with that. Lastly, as far as the ambulance service in town is, tomorrow night the Ashway Fire District will be discussing the $50,000 they just approved, maintaining interest in funding both in the town of Hopkinton and the Ashway Fire District. And I recently sent an email to the Director of Health of the state with, I think, 5 questions I haven't heard. I probably should have sent it to the ambulance, but I sent it right to the Director, and hopefully I'll get some answers on several things that I think are relevant. I think if we're going to discuss any topic, and certainly the ambulance corps will be coming before us for that budget allocation, and where it is that they will be looking for an increase, that we should be prepared with some good questions. And one of which that I really want to know, and it was one of the questions I did mention to the Director of Health, is the territory of the Ashway Fire District is the same as the territory of the ambulance corps, ambulance association, and also similarly it would be the same, I didn't mention in my letter, but also Hope Valley, as the part of the Hope Valley, Wyoming Fire District that's in the town of Hopkinton, is that coextensive or the same as the Hope Valley Ambulance Corps? Legitimate question, because if you're dealing with taxpayer money, you should ought to know how that thing is impacted. So there's a lot more I want to learn, but anyways, I just want to tell you what I've been up to, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Scott, what time is that meeting tomorrow night?
The meeting is at 6 o'clock.
At the firehouse?
Yes. My concern specifically is, and I appreciate the work that Solicitor did, Kevin McAllister, and the town manager and the town council, dealing with withholding funds. And my issue for the Ashway Ambulance Association is, and I'll tell you, the letter's going to be in the Wesley Sun tomorrow. You have the president of the Ashway Ambulance Association, and her husband's the treasurer, and her first cousin and her father is 2 of the 3 flag commissioners. They're going to decide on the payment of $50,000. Are they going to be as vigilant looking over that $50,000 as the town council of Hopkins was looking over the $50,000 grant from the town of Hopkins to the Ashway Ambulance Association? And that concerns me. It's a logical question. So I plan to be there, but there's going to be a letter in the Wesley Sun. I sent a letter to the Sun Friday. I had contacted the Wesley Sun today, and they said that anything sent on a Friday ends up in the Tuesday paper because of this, situation. But anyways, I should have a letter in the Wesley Sun tomorrow, and so it's a topic I'm really interested in. I'm former fire commissioner in Ashway and former moderator of the Ashway Fire District, so we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Okay. All right. New business, discuss, consider, and vote on the recommendation. Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Finally, someone spoke longer than I do at a town council meeting. I appreciate it, Scott. My name is Joe Moreau. I live on 32 Old Depot Road. Good evening. Believe it or not, all I need is 4 or 5 minutes. Before this whole process started, I had no idea the amount of work that our town council does, between the emails, the paperwork, the meetings, the calls from residents. This responsibility must be overwhelming. Thank you for your hard work and devotion to our town. Being retired, I have a lot of time to do the research. We cannot expect the town council to do a lot of research on different projects. They have too much work to do as it is. I checked the budget because I had a resident that said to me that the town council members were making $5,000 or $6,000 a year. And I said, well, that's great. Where did you get the information from? Well, so-and-so told me. And I said, where did they get it from? So I said, I was just looking at the budget, and do you realize the town council president gets $3,000, the VP gets $2,500, and the members get $2,225? And I said to this resident, I said, that doesn't cover their expenses. It doesn't cover anywhere near their time. So I just wish people would do more research and realize exactly what it is. I had a conversation with Frank and another town council member after one of the meetings, and Frank said he was going to ask Crossman Engineering to do a second opinion to clarify some of the issues with the burn dump. That made a lot of sense to me. Frank wasn't sure how long it would take. After the town council meeting on September 4th, I went to the town hall to do some research. I asked about the Crossman Engineering study and was told it was given to the town council on September 4th. I was confused because the hearing was closed and there was some important information that we needed to review. Lisa was kind enough to give me a copy of that. I spent a few days looking at it. A few days later, Frank had called me and we had a nice conversation about general discussion on different topics. I asked Frank, since the hearing was closed, on this second opinion was not part of the record, how could we ask questions about this? And Frank said the town council could ask questions. Certainly I can't, and I respect that. It's just not part of the process. And I realize you just can't go back and forth with something like that. I would like to mention two quick points which pertain to Frank's and others' concerns about the liability for the burn dump. And it's real quick. This information was from Sean Connery from the DEM, Carney rather, and I'm not going to read this entire memo, I only have 5 minutes. He explained that under the state statute and regulations that apply to release of hazardous materials, that it was not likely the town would be deemed a responsible party for the hazardous material release resulting from Roland Bolles's operation based on definitions found in the state statute. He had other things to say, but he went on to say, during the investigation to the business that Mr. Roland Boulez operated on the subject property, I recall an issue of an old solid waste on site came up in a discussion with Mr. Boulez. Review of in-house records maintained by the department did not identify information or a record to substantiate the claim. I thought that was interesting. The second point was from the Hoffman Engineering book. It's in section 1 of the previous environmental reports, and it was a binder provided to the town. And it's regarding inspections, and I'm going to quote. During the 01 September 2004 inspection, DEM personnel asked Mr. Roland Boulez if he had placed the solid waste on the properties, and Mr. Boulez stated that he had deposited all of the waste on the properties. I found that to be interesting. Last thing I want to talk about is the cap and cost estimates, which may lead to questions by the town council members. I certainly can't answer those questions. Real quick, there's just 4 points that I'd like to mention on this recap sheet. And what I did was I took a look at the first section, which is investigations and permits, and the total on that one category is $233,000. Of that, $189,000 is for outstanding DEM fines against Boulez and Townsend. There's also $10,000 for legal fees. The second point is under the category of removal of solid waste. I took a look at that, and as you can tell, in my opinion, I believe there's zero liability to the town. But if there was some concern with that, you're talking about excavator work, backhoe work, dump trucks, laborers. All of that work could be done by town employees to save that money. That's under the second category. The third category, which I found interesting, was landfill capping. And it talks about boulder consolidation, $15,000. I'm sure you're familiar with the Stilson Road project. When you go down 95, you can see the boulders along the side of that property to border that property. So I'm sure that this boulder consolidation is basically to install solar. The last thing on that category is I did some math on the gravel. And the gravel was $120,000 for 7,500 yards of gravel at a cost of $16 a yard. I went to Richmond Sand and Gravel and asked them what the cost is, and they told me $23 a yard. And somehow we get the impression it was from the town, because they said, well, it would be for 7,500 yards. And he said, well, I could work with you to get that number a little bit cheaper. He said, but I don't think we can match $16 an hour. I mean, $16 a yard. So up to that point, I was real sketchy with what I feel are inflated numbers on this Kaplan report. I did a math worksheet on it. I had someone else do it that's much smarter than myself to do this. And there's copies available for this. On that one category, based on 20 inches of overfill on option 2 that was in the Hoffman study, that is inflated by almost $34,000, that one category of gravel. The last category I want to mention is landfill monitoring and maintenance. That category is $91,900 under that one category. It talks about quarterly reports and groundwater monitoring. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. That's not the town. It really isn't. We all kind of chuckled when we heard that they were going to use a weed whacker to take care of the grass issue up here. Well, on this report, it says landfill mowing, $3,500. $1,000 for landfill inspection. The total was $752,000 on this report. They have some budgeted numbers there. Just those few facts that I mentioned, I was able to deduct $327,000 from that total. My point is, I just think these numbers are inflated. I believe it's a scare tactic to say, look, this is what you're responsible for, but I'm sure you'll spend the time and take a look at that.
Well, Joe, what I'll do is I'll give this report that you gave me with all your marks.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
To Lisa, and she can give it to the balance.
Okay, thank you. All of us here tonight love our town, otherwise we would not be here. I appreciate what the town council does, and I hope this information is helpful. I will spend the hours to do the research if you spend some time, which I'm sure you will, to read it. Thank you, I appreciate it. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Was I less than Scott or more?
I think you're a little more.
A little bit?
Don't worry about it.
I added in the story about the residents, that was.
Yeah, that's it.
You want me to catch up next time?
Next time, because I'm done talking.
Well said. Thanks.
Under new business, discuss, consider, and vote on a recommendation of the town solicitor to authorize him to act on behalf of the town council in agreeing to a surveyed property description clarifying the precise location of the southernmost boundary line of that certain parcel of real estate owned by the town of Hopkinton, located on Clarks Falls Road in Hopkinton, and identified as Assessor's Plat 7, Lot 24, which is also the northernmost boundary line of that certain adjacent parcel of real estate located on Clarks Falls Road, known as Assessor's Plat 7, Lot 25, owned by the Westerly Community Credit Union. Should the town council agree to the recommendation of the town solicitor as set forth above, the terms of said agreement would also authorize the town solicitor to act on behalf of the town to do all acts necessary to enter into and execute a proposed settlement with the Westerly Community Credit Union, establishing said boundary line between said parcels identified above, thereby resolving litigation pending in the Washington County Superior Court entitled Westerly Community Credit Union versus the town of Hopkinton, A.L. Docket number, Washington Municipal Court, I think, so that's WN-2018-0300, at no cost to the town of Hopkinton. Kevin Metallis.
Kevin, before you start, I have a question for you.
Yep.
I do my banking at the credit union.
Yep.
So, quote, I'm a member, as long as you have an account there. Do I need to recuse?
Short answer, no.
I wouldn't think so, but I wanted to.
No, as long as, I mean, it's ultimately, it's your decision, your discretion. As long as you feel like that will not affect your decision one way or another.
I'm
there's
not
no
a board
need for-
member, I'm just.
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. I think it's the second time since I've been here I got to stand at the podium. So I will say I have no intention of trying to beat the record of the previous two speakers, but hopefully I won't be too wordy. This is a little bit complicated and a little bit technical. I'll try to bottom line this first, but I'm happy to go as deep as you want me to further clarify this. So basically, the credit union owns approximately 10 or 11 acres of land that is just south of land that the town owns, which is almost 5 acres. The only reason the town owns that 5-acre parcel that is shown on the diagram I passed out right at the beginning of the meeting is that in 1975 they took the property at a tax sale. So as you know, those kinds of acquisitions cost time and money, and it's nice when the town is in a position to just turn around and sell the property and maybe get some of their lost tax revenue back, because the owner would have to pay the taxes as a condition of taking the title and removing the town's interest from it. But in this case, the land is landlocked and frankly not worth all that much because there's not a big market for people who are going to be willing to buy 5 acres in a landlocked area. At least that's in theory. There's a ways to solve that issue, but that's, again, involves time and expense. So to make a long story short, the Wesley Credit Union acquired the 10 or 11 acre parcel just to the south of the town's property. The Wesley Community Credit Union property is Assessor's Plat 7, Lot 25. And on the diagram I handed out before the meeting, it's just below the yellow line I drew on the diagram.
Does it go all the way over to the corner where it drops down on our property?
Yes.
Goes all the way over there.
So what happened was the representatives of the credit union quite properly approached Jim Lamphere initially about their goal at the time was to see if the town and the credit union would enter into a boundary agreement, because when the credit union sent their surveyor out to find the boundary line for purposes of just working with the property, appropriately, the surveyor could not find the boundary markers. It was an old meets and bounds description. The property search went back to the early 1900s. That referred to a couple of monuments, markers on the ground, which have disappeared over the course of time. I think we all know that happens sometimes, especially when property is like way out there and not mowed, not improved, not dealt with at all. That's what happened here. So the credit union was looking for ways to solve the problem. And when Jim and I actually met with them in Jim's office, and we had a very nice talk and exchange of ideas, Jim and I, of course, explained we had no authority to make deals on behalf of the town, but we would look into the issues and give them our thoughts, and then at the appropriate time we consult with the appropriate council and town manager components of the government. So I thought, and told them I thought, that a boundary agreement was going to be a problem for the town. It really didn't make any sense for the town to do that because the town had not foreclosed on the right of redemption of the prior owners. That process, as I said, we acquired it in 1975. 6 years after we acquired it, a company called Landco filed a claim to the piece that the town took, but didn't do anything about it. It just sat there. So that was recorded in the land evidence records, which creates another kind of cloud on the title for the parcel that the town had. And entering into a boundary agreement with the credit union would not have solved that problem for the town. In other words, we would come up with a random boundary line in an agreement, and yet we might be, if the Landco or whoever else might have been claiming an interest in the property, came back to the town later, they'd accuse the town of taking a piece of their property and changing the size and shape of it. So that was a problem, and I think, well, saying so, I think the credit union agreed with that thought process. That didn't make sense for the town. So I didn't bother to get authorization to say that's not a good idea because I just knew it was not a good idea, and they seemed to agree. So then, they talked about, well, what else can we do? So again, I'm not there to give legal advice to the credit union, but, we talked about some concepts, and it became clear to everyone that a quiet title action needs to be filed in the Superior Court in order to clear up all this title issues and lien issues. And I also had this wild guess that the town really wouldn't be interested in investing a lot of money to pursue a Superior Court title quieting action because there wasn't much in it for the town. So again, didn't feel I was overstepping my bounds, but I thought, well, it does seem like a quiet title action needs to be done, but really, I really don't think the town is going to want to do that because of the expense involved, and maybe the credit union might want to consider that as an option for them. So that's what they did. They apparently agreed and filed a Superior Court suit. I know you probably remember, as the solicitor for the town, I received notice of the suit, and thank you. I was asked to accept service on behalf of the individual council members in your official capacity, of course, and I got that authorization to do that. I answered the case and entered my appearance in the Superior Court case, which that's the case that's captioned in the agenda item tonight. Westerly Community Credit Union versus Town of Hopkinton, docket number WM 2018-0300. They call it WM in the Superior Court now because it's a miscellaneous petition, which means it's not like a run-of-the-mill lawsuit seeking money damages. It's more of this kind of thing. Let's clear up the title. And I want to emphasize that the Westerly Credit Union was not seeking any type of monetary relief from the town for this. In fact, I think it's pretty plain that the town was, relatively cooperative in terms of working with them. Now, they named everybody who had, like Landco, as a co-defendant in the case. They named them as parties, as well as, I believe, another neighboring property owner whose boundary line might be affected. And none of them bothered to get involved, so they've been defaulted for purposes of this action. So the only two parties that are left are the town of Hopkinton and the credit union. Al DiOrio had done a meets and bounds description of what he thought was probably the original boundary line. As you know, a meets and bounds description, it says, beginning at an angle, and it has longitudes and latitudes. And I sat down one day in my conference room and I spread all these papers out and I was trying to draw a diagram. And after I did that for a few minutes, I said, wait a minute, I got to show this to the council and try to explain this to them. I'm not even sure I'm doing this right. I mean, I know north, south, east, and west. After that, my skill set declines rapidly. So anyway, I asked the lawyer for the credit union to ask Al DiOrio, the surveyor, to draw a sketch of it so I could show it to the council with some confidence that it was accurate, so to see what it looks like. So that's the diagram you have in front of you. I've given a copy to the clerk and to the town manager for the record. To make a long story short, what we did know at the beginning of this journey was that we had, the town had 4.96 acres of land, originally. And what I know is that after, if the town were to accept this boundary line, done by Al DiOrio on behalf of the credit union, the town would still have 4.96 acres of land. So all it's really doing, the only thing it's really changing is that it's defining the boundary line for this property so the town can more easily deal with it in the future. And they're asking us now to agree to this boundary line. They're asking the council to agree to this boundary line. I'm recommending to the town council unequivocally that I think that's a good idea, that the council agree to that boundary line. And if the council is so inclined, that agreement would settle the case in the Superior Court. Once the appeal period goes by, 20 days from that being entered as a final judgment, the title is clear, the town knows what it has, the credit union knows what it has. Didn't cost the town any money to solve the problem, so I think it's a good thing to do. And the other part of my agenda item request is that you authorize me to sign whatever papers are needed, such as a dismissal stipulation, and those kinds of documents to dispose of the case, and I think we're going to go after that. So,
So you need a motion, or anybody have any questions for Kevin on this parcel litigation?
can make a motion and then we can discuss. So I'll make a motion to authorize the town solicitor to act on behalf of the town council in agreeing to survey property description clarifying the precise location of the southernmost boundary line of the parcel at Parks Falls Road, owned by Westerly Community Credit Union.
Second.
Okay, motion made, seconded. Did you include the signing of the dismissal? Because that's the other part of what you need to do.
Authorizing.
And authorizing the signing of dismissal.
Second that too.
Okay, motion made, seconded. Any discussion, folks?
No.
Kevin, I hate the phrase, but this sounds like a win-win.
I didn't want to say that, but it
I
sounds
thought
like
that,
right to me too.
I was waiting for you to say it though. Okay, yeah.
Good job.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, the other thing I'm always thinking down the road. I didn't know if there's some way we could cut a piece of Hopkins property, give it to the credit union, just to get a right-of-way along the outside edge to that property. Then the value increases.
Well, I was proceeding one step at a time. There's always the option of the town to ask for that or any other thing that.
That's the saleable piece of property. If we can get it deeded right away, give them a chunk of it.
This piece has got to be unequivocally completed, and then the town has all kinds of options that didn't happen before. And that would be one of them.
Okay.
Kevin, is this
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the whole thing, Kevin. I thought it was good that, I'm just thinking of,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
good
we want
one.
to get rid of some of these properties that we've hung on to for years.
Is this one of the famous 13 pieces of property that the town owns? You know what I'm talking about?
I've heard that before. I didn't ask that question. Jim would know that. But I would say this, that we've heard a lot of talk in recent weeks about the comprehensive plan, and rightfully so, and the goals of the comprehensive plan. And Tom, you just touched on that. One of those goals is to dispose wherever possible of land, excess land that the town has that has no use for.
Right.
So that would be entirely consistent with the type of plan you're suggesting with that goal. So,
We have to do that in relationship with land co.
no,
We could
No,
do that
because
separate.
they defaulted, right?
well, they're defaulted in this, so, at this
They
point.
didn't show up.
At this point, they have.
So that claim is default.
Entirely?
That's my interpretation of it. So, again, there's a lot of things the town can consider down the road, but we need to address this.
Right.
I do think, Tom, you got a good idea though. Trade a little piece for a little piece so we can make that viable lot.
Yeah, or offer it to the Washington,
Or
Washington Credit Union.
any one of the neighbors.
And then they have their perfect lot line.
That's another option.
To sell it to them.
Yeah.
I mean, landlocked land is not, and we've had it for what, 35, 40 years?
43 years.
43 years we've had this property.
It's not,
If we
nobody's
sell
paying
it-
taxes on it.
And if we sell it to the Western Credit Union, now it becomes taxable property.
And it would enhance their piece of property.
That's right, it would. If they was bigger.
There's a lot of wins in the future with this too.
So, but this line has to be
Defunct.
adjudicated first.
Yep.
Okay.
Otherwise, title is not clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, motion was made and seconded. Bill, do you have anything? You want to say something? Any further discussion, folks? Okay, having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Kevin, you're a little bit longer than us. Just a
I
little.
knew that was gonna happen.
But it's okay.
Should thank Al Diorio too for helping out there.
He's paid for that.
He was paid for that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
He's compensated for that.
Oh, thank you.
Second, public forum. Anyone out there wishing to be heard? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.